They say that a picture tells 1,000 words. So, what do you see when I put this picture here for you? So what is it that you see? Today is my 50th birthday, no husband, no kids, I made the cake myself, crying face, and, a very, very, what appears to be sad and unhappy woman. Now, we have to be careful in the modern age that these things aren't generated, but regardless of the fact of whether this is an AI-generated image or not, the sentiment still remains the same. There are quite a large group of women out there who've been sold a dream in the version of a kind of a third wave of feminism. And what have these women been told? Well, these women have been told that actually you don't have to go the old way. You don't have to go out there and pair bond with a man. You don't have to go through the stress and difficulties of having children. You don't have to worry about any of that. What you can do, you can go out and you can get your university course, and then you can go and live the dream and have a fantastic career. You can make loads of money. You can go on holiday where you want. You can go out on a weekend. There's nobody telling you what to do. You can have a string of relationships with no strings attached whatsoever, and you can have the best of every world, and everything's going to work out perfectly for you. But of course, as those middle-aged people who are listening to this, myself included, we all know that around the age of 50, something dramatic happens to people, and that thing is called the realities of life. Life begins at 40, isn't far off, or however you want to put it. The drip, drip, drip of time, ever going onwards and onwards, eventually makes us see things that we never thought possible about our own lives, and we do get a chance to reflect and think, oh, right, I actually get it now. But of course, that's one of the ironies of life. It's always given to us too late, that knowledge, isn't it? But perhaps that's obviously how it was always meant to be. So to analyse feminism and second and third wave feminism, I have to say that the first thing is that first wave feminism was definitely needed in society. Women, for a long time throughout history have been viewed as property or chattels, I think is a good way to put it, and kind of appendages to men. I do think that men have had it hard throughout ages as well. I think, they've had to go to war, and, they've had to carve a living out, and, obviously both of the sexes have had it pretty tough. And I think on balance, we've probably just had it about the same across all of time. But first wave feminism was required. Now, the second wave of feminism around the 60s basically told women what this woman here has bought into, that, the family unit isn't necessarily required, and you can go and forge your own path. And, I will state right at this point here, I've got no problem with that. If you're a woman and you want to go and have a career, you want to have your own life, you want to, do your own thing, have at it. Brilliant. I just get the feeling that as time progresses, that choice is going to come more and more into focus, and what you're ultimately left with is loneliness. And, you can have all the friends you want, and you can have cool friends that never have kids, and all of these things can happen. But ultimately, the end result is loneliness and a life reflecting on the things that you might have had as you grow older. And so, putting a few of these things into perspective here. So, here you go. The complete destruction of traditional marriage and the nuclear family is the revolutionary or utopian goal of feminism. So, quite up front there, this is the goal of feminism. And so, Kate certainly believes that she knows what she's talking about. Or to put it a better way, from Roxanne here, how will the family unit be destroyed? Well, we can throw the whole ideology into question. We can start developing a community where we can fight, and we can all leave our husbands and end up like this lady here, all withered and lonely. So the nuclear family must be destroyed, whatever its ultimate meaning. The breakup of families is now an objectively revolutionary process. And there you see the word revolutionary, where we start getting in to cultural Marxism again. And so what do I believe with regard to all of this? Well, I personally believe that second and third wave feminism has been a blight on our society for a few different reasons. The first, of course, being that it's dramatically affected young men. And how has it affected young men? Well, of course, toxic masculinity is a major problem, but then, as this lady points out here, but 43% of boys are raised by single mothers, and most of the teachers are female. You see that the problem here, the loss of the family unit has gone towards so many women being dependent upon the state on their own. Once you start to break up the family unit, then what you'll find is that women, well, some women will still have children and they'll go off and they'll still have that child without the need for a man, and then that becomes the burden of the state, and then everyone has to pay for it anyway. So let's have a look at when second wave feminism hit. So this is from the Institute for Family Studies, but if we look here, and this is in American marriage, but this mirrors what's happening all the way across the West generally. Around the 1960s, marriage started to drop off, and it's still doing that now. It's still happening right now. And the amount of people getting married is dropping in society. The amount of single mothers is increasing. The burden to the state is increasing. And how might you say, is this going in terms of people's happiness? Well, it's quite strange, isn't it, when you look at these two graphs? What you'll see is that in general terms, feminism has brought about unhappiness for women. The tick up you'll see in the male graph there is essentially the men's movement. So men have actually realised, well, hang on, if women are going to go off and they don't want to be part of the family unit, well, perhaps I can do that. And of course, men are far less concerned with the niceties of life. Men are quite happy with very little when push comes to shove when they're on their own. They do tend to drink too much and, abuse themselves generally, but men can go off and they can make the best of it. But you'll see here, regardless of how it affects men, the initial photo I showed you with the lady with the cake, this is why the lady's standing there with the cake. That's why it's happening. Because of this, because of feminism. So is there a point to what I'm trying to say? Well, there's always a point. And let me say this. Prior to making this video, I did ask my wife, or Mrs. Waffle, might be a better way to put it, what her views are, and I had a conversation with her about our married life and how she felt about the topic of, missing out on things. Has she missed out on certain elements of life? What were her deeper thoughts on the philosophy of marriage and everything else? And I can tell you, before she answered that she is being a successful person in her own right. She's had a career, she's started businesses, she's had children, she's done quite a lot. She has all of her hobbies and interests, particularly music and that sort of thing, that she does, and she doesn't really feel like she's missed out on anything. Obviously, over the last couple of decades, children have been right at the top of our agenda, and they've taken up both of our times exclusively. But she actually made the point that, talking of enlightenment from a female perspective, she actually made the point that she believed that women can have that enlightenment period. You can have that period in your life where you come into yourself, particularly, as I said earlier, when you're wise as you get older. And she believes that she has been able to do that, particularly as children are now grown up, etc. And she believes also that, being married doesn't necessarily mean that you're a caged bird, as it were. You can go off. I go off hiking. She can go off and do things within the confines of the marriage, of course. But, living a part independent life is one of the parts of leading a successful marriage. And her thoughts on that were, we can live both together and enjoy our own independent lives all at the same time. So being married doesn't necessarily be or have to mean the cage bird. A better metaphor may be a cage bird with the door open, and that generally mirrors how I feel about things as well. So you can have the family, the nuclear family, your life, your career, your children, and you can have a certain level of independence, which leads to a more rounded version of being happy. And the last thing I'll say on that is possibly one of the results of why second wave feminism in the 1960s was brought to the fore was due to the generalized nature of how men view marriage with women. And, not everything is the fault of women. There are faults on the male side as well. And I think generally some men do have a problem with allowing women the time and space with which to live out their lives as well. And I think that's the final ingredient, the icing on the top, if you like, of a successful marriage. In that, I think, as a man, I have to allow my wife, within our relationship, within the married relationship, the time and space to be herself and have a life on her own outside of what she would term her core being to be, namely, a mother and wife. And I think very much what can temper all of this needing to be free, as is preached by feminism, is allowing both her and myself the freedom to actually be an individual within a married unit. And I recognise that this is a balancing act. It's always difficult when you're dealing with different people, but I believe that the end is of the successful marriage bit, and the antidote to everything that I've just said is allowing your other half, or in my case my better half, maybe a better way to put it, the time and space to be an individual in her own right, as she allows me to be also. Now, aside from that, I believe when you stand back and look at what feminism has done for women en masse, and we're talking about second and third wave feminism, feminism has been toxic, not only to the lives and happiness of women, the very gender that they seek to help, but it's also been extremely destructive to the family unit and to men's happiness. It's been destructive to the lives of a lot of children who don't have both parents present, because you're told you don't have to stay with your man, you can go off and do it on your own. It's been destructive to the state, because it costs the state more to maintain people. When people are grouped together in nuclear family units, they tend to function better in society, not only in terms of happiness and community, but in terms of economically. I viewed first wave feminism as a definite plus. Yes, women needed to come out, if you like, and do what they were going to do. And even the early version of feminism, which says, you go and have a career if that's what you want. Fine, you go and have the career if that's what you want. But more and more, what we're seeing here is, as we saw with the cake lady, more and more women are discovering in middle age just what a lie they've been sold in terms of the feminist utopia that they were told was going to be there for them. Anyway, thanks very much for your time.